If you're looking for an easy and engaging enrichment tool for your dogs that's also a yummy snack, a head of lettuce is going to be so much fun. Head to the store, grab a head of lettuce. You're going to want to set a tablecloth down because it is going to be a little messy. I did this out on my deck. I recommend maybe doing it outside versus inside because there's going to be a bit of cleanup. And you also want to be mindful of where you're allowing your dog to do this. If you're doing it in the front yard, in their pen, and they make a mess, which they will, that's how lettuce works, you will probably see some animals coming in to get the remnants that are still in the yard. So what I did was I put a tablecloth down, I let them play on my deck in a confined space, and then when I was done letting them play with it, I just scooped it on up, took it over to the woods, and tossed it out for the animals to eat the remnants of without them being in our yard making a mess or causing issues. So I love a good head of lettuce as an enrichment tool because there are so many ways that dogs can play with this. Now, the first time you give this to your dog, they're probably going to be a little confused. They're not really going to know what it is. Some dogs will bat it around like it's a soccer ball. Some will tear it off leaf by leaf. Some will chomp it because it's a great snack. And some will turn it into confetti. I have 3 dogs. I had 3 different responses to this when they were playing with the head of lettuce. And I did get one for all 3 of my dogs to share because I was not going to allow them to eat all of that. And so this was a playtime where I let all 3 of them play with it for a few minutes individually, 2 different times throughout the course of the day before I got rid of the remnants of it. So when I first put it down, I did have to kind of show them how to peel it back a little bit. So I let them explore it for a minute. You can let your dog explore it as well. Then I just kind of peeled back the leaf so they could see, oh, this comes apart. My dogs very quickly caught on and they were taking it off leaf by leaf, and then they were taking chunks out of it, the bigger dogs, and my tiny dog turned it into confetti. She had so much fun just playing with the individual leaves and ripping them apart. She just pulled and had a ball with it. And this is really nice because it is something that dogs can eat, so they can have a nice little snack. Again, watch how much they're actually consuming. But they can tear it apart. And if they're busy tearing that apart, they're not tearing apart their other toys. You can let them roll it around. It's great mental stimulation. It's a lot to figure out. So make sure you kind of introduce it to your dog in stages so that they can figure out how to play with it. Let them explore. This is very much like handing a toy to a toddler and just letting their imagination go and figuring out how to play with those things instead of showing them how to play it. So you want to give them a little hint. It does kind of come apart a little bit. There's some leafy parts to it, so you can do fun things. And that will lead them to then discover if they want to roll it around and sniff it and play with it and bat it around like a ball. If they want to unwrap the layers one layer at a time, or if they want to take chunks out of it. And either way, it's going to be good mental stimulation. It's also going to be good for their teeth because they're chewing at it. So they have to figure out how to unwrap this lettuce. They have to figure out how to get the chunks out of it because it's not super easy. It's a very gentle food, so it's not going to hurt their teeth as they're chewing on it, but it's not going to be easy for them to break it apart. And so they're going to have to figure out, do I unwrap it? Do I take chunks out of it? How do I function within this? And then once it's no longer in one whole section, once they start to get into it a little bit, now it becomes much easier for them to take chunks out of. So if you buy a whole head of lettuce and you cut it in half, that's going to be very different mental stimulation than if it was a whole head of lettuce. Now, you do want to make sure that you're mindful of how you are working with this. Once they've played with it, you may want to keep it for maybe the rest of the day, but because they have been playing with it, there's also germs on it. So if you are going to keep it, put it in a little Ziploc bag, put it in your refrigerator so the germs don't get everywhere and it's not going to, have any issues. And then make sure you play with it later that day. I would not keep it more than a day. I'm not a food expert or a vet or anything like that. It's just my personal opinion as someone who is aware of food and germs. I would not keep it more than a day, but I did let them play with it in the morning and then in the early afternoon. So there was a couple hours in between it. And again, I shared it with all of my dogs. If you want to prolong it, cut it in half or cut it into sections or wedges and let them play with that. They can still unravel things. They can still eat chunks of it. They can still play with it. They can toss it around like confetti. They can chew it up like confetti, even if it is in sections. And that way you can make your own salad if you want. You can use part of that later on. So it's a multi-purpose game for your dogs. You also have the ability to give it to them in different sections over the course of a few days, but it's going to be mentally stimulating in a different capacity. It's not going to roll. It's not going to be hard to get it apart. It's going to be much easier for them to get it apart. So you've got a lot of options and you can do it differently every time you do this. So if you're getting them a head of lettuce every 2 weeks, you can do it differently. The first time, give it to them as a whole. The second time, give it to them as a chunk or a half or whatever, and let them learn how to play with it in different ways. But be mindful, this is messy. They are going to eat it, and that's okay, and that is good, but don't let them eat too terribly much. Just be mindful of how much you're going to be able to give them. And then you want to monitor them after the fact. You want to pay attention to how they feel, how those tummies feels, how everything goes outside for them later on to make sure they're not struggling with anything so that you can adjust for the next time you play with this. If they're okay and you're good, fantastic. If it seems that they're having a little bit of a hard time digesting it, less next time. Cut it into those sections. And then just see what games you can play with it. You're gonna have a lot of fun. You can even help your dog get in there. I like to play games with my dogs where I have them chase the little leaves around. I'll hand them leaves. So if they kind of like take the head of lettuce apart, I'll take a part that they've dropped and hand it to them. And that's a different experience than trying to get it off the head of lettuce. So they can have a lot of fun with it. It's very interesting for dogs to play with. It's a really fun game for them. And it's also a very healthy snack that is also pretty good for their teeth as they're chewing it. Drop your questions on potential enrichment toy and activity ideas. We've got full playlists for you, helping you navigate the world of being a dog parent, from your travel to your dog photos, videos, and content, to enrichment ideas, health and wellness, and to the products like leashes and harnesses and toys that you're using with your dogs so that we can help you make this your best pup lifestyle ever. We'll see you in the upcoming episodes.